So, have you ever wished you could, like, airlift your garden to some ideal, perfect soil paradise?
Right. Wouldn't that be the dream?
Totally. Well, today's deep dive is about the next best thing. We're diving into Farmonaut's ultimate guide to raised beds.
Oh, yeah. Their guide is fantastic. Very thorough.
It seems like everyone's buzzing about raised beds lately.
Yeah.
I was curious, what's all the hype about? Like, are they really that much better than just planting the ground?
Oh, there are some serious advantages for sure. The guide lays them out really well.
Okay, so spill the tea. What's got everyone so excited about raised beds?
Well, for me, it's the control over the soil.
Ah, makes sense. Soil is everything in gardening.
It's true. Imagine this. You're about to bake, like, the most incredible cake ever.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't just use whatever random ingredients were lying around, would you?
Well, no, you need the good stuff.
Exactly. So think of the soil as the foundation for your garden. Raised beds let you handpick that perfect blend, so your garden cake turns out amazing.
I love that analogy. No more battling clay or rocks. It's like giving your plants the royal treatment from the get-go.
Exactly. You're creating the ideal environment.
So, what else besides the soil? The guide mentioned something about drainage being a game changer with raised beds, right?
Oh, yeah, drainage is huge. That's another common gardening headache solved.
It's true. Good drainage is key. But it can be tricky depending on where you live. What makes raised beds different?
Well, it's pretty simple when you think about it. By elevating the bed, you're naturally improving how the water flows through the soil.
Makes sense.
Less chance of those roots just sitting in water, which can cause all sorts of issues.
Soggy bottoms, nobody wants that.
Exactly. And healthy roots mean healthier plants overall, right? And healthier plants mean
More veggies. Don't leave me hanging.
exactly more veggies. The guide suggests you can actually get way more produce from the same space just by switching to raised beds.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. More homegrown goodness, who wouldn't want that? But the guide mentions all these different materials you could use to build these things, like wood, concrete, metal.
Yeah, there are a lot of options.
Where do we even start with that? So many choices. It's like, do I want my raised bed to look rustic or modern or what?
It's true, and the materials don't just affect the look. They each have their own pros and cons, practically speaking.
Right, like how long will this thing actually last?
Exactly. So let's break it down, starting with the classic,
Yeah.
wood.
Yeah, wood seems like the go-to for a lot of gardeners.
It is. It's readily available, pretty affordable, and easy to work with, even if you're not like a master carpenter.
True, you can find lumber pretty much anywhere.
Exactly. Plus, it just has that, nice natural look that works well in most gardens.
It's that classic garden aesthetic.
Hmm.
But I've also heard wood can be, well, not the most durable option out there, especially exposed to the elements.
Yeah, that's the trade-off. Wood is susceptible to rot and insects, especially over time.
Makes sense. So what can you do? Just accept its fate.
Well, you can choose rot-resistant woods like cedar or redwood.
Oh, right. Those last longer.
They do, definitely. But even then, you might have to replace them eventually, maybe every 5 to 10 years, depending on where you live and how harsh the weather is.
Okay, so not exactly a planted and forget it solution. Makes
Right.
sense. What if you want something truly long-lasting? Something you don't have to baby?
Then we're moving into the realm of concrete blocks.
Concrete. Okay. That sounds pretty indestructible.
Pretty much. They're incredibly durable. We're talking decades of use.
Oh.
And they have that clean, modern look a lot of people are going for these days.
Yeah, I've seen those. They have a cool minimalist vibe.
Exactly. The downside is, well, they're heavy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Not as easy to move around if you're building multiple beds or like to rearrange your garden every few years.
That's a good point. So it's like strength training and gardening all in one.
Yeah, right. Get your workout in. But seriously, concrete is a great option if you want something low maintenance and long lasting.
Okay, strong contender. Any other heavy hitters in the durability department?
Metal's worth a look too. Corrugated steel is becoming a popular choice.
Metal. Interesting. Durable, I'd imagine. But wouldn't it get crazy hot in the sun?
That's a good point. That's something to watch out for, especially in warmer climates. Metal does absorb heat more than other materials, but you can choose lighter colors. That helps to reflect the sunlight.
Okay, yeah, good strategy.
And, of course, think about where you're placing the bed. A little bit of shade can go a long way.
So location, location, location.
Yeah.
What about folks who want their raised beds to be, a focal point, like a statement piece in their garden?
If you're going for that real wow factor, you can't go wrong with stone or brick.
Ah, now that's elegant.
Right, it's
Hmm.
classic. And they age beautifully. Those beds will be around for a long, long time.
It'll be like a family heirloom. Pass it down to the grandkids.
Exactly. The downside is, well, cost is a big one. Stone and brick are definitely the priciest option.
Makes sense.
And they can be more labor intensive to build. You might need some masonry skills or, be prepared to hire a professional.
So we've talked about the structure of the raised bed, the different materials and all that. But the guide talks about soil as the, heart of a raised bed. Why is the soil in a raised bed such a big deal? It's true. The guide makes it clear. It's not like you can just shovel some dirt in there and call it a day.
Nope, definitely not. It's about creating that perfect little underground world, where those roots can really thrive.
So there's an actual science to it, like a special raised bed soil recipe.
Kind of. And the guide breaks it down really well. It's like each ingredient has a job to do.
Okay, I'm ready to take notes. Hit me with this soil
You're
recipe.
right. So the guide recommends a mix of topsoil, compost.
Compost makes sense.
Right. Gotta have that good stuff. Plus peat moss or coconut coir, and then either perlite or vermiculite.
Okay, those last couple sound a little intense. Can you break that down? Like, what do those actually do for the soil?
Sure, so you've got your topsoil, that's like the base, right? But it doesn't have all the nutrients plants need on its own.
Right, that's where the compost comes in.
Exactly. Compost is like the nutrient powerhouse.
Mm.
But then we've got to make sure the soil isn't too dense. We need good drainage, right? So the peat moss or coconut coir, if you prefer, they're like sponges. They help hold on to just the right amount of moisture.
Okay, so it doesn't dry out too fast. Smart.
And then on the flip side, you've got perlite or vermiculite. Those guys are all about airflow and drainage. They're light and airy, so they create little pockets in the soil so the roots can breathe.
Wow, it's like a whole underground ecosystem.
It really is. And the best part is the guide even gives you the ratios, like how much of each ingredient to use.
Oh, perfect. No more guessing games. So we got our beds built. We've got our super soil all mixed up. What else do we need to know to become raised bed masters?
Well, one of the things I love about raised beds is that they kind of naturally help with pest control.
Oh, right. The guide mentioned that. Something about how it just makes it harder for pests to thrive.
Yeah, a few reasons actually. For one thing, just by elevating everything, you're creating a bit of a barrier for those crawly critters like slugs. Makes it harder for them to reach your precious plants.
It's like building a moat, but for bugs.
Exactly. Plus, remember how we talked about good airflow? Well, that helps prevent fungal diseases too. They love it when things are damp and stagnant, which is less likely in a raised bed.
So healthy plants, fewer pests. What's not to love?
Right. And because you can usually walk all the way around a raised bed, it's easier to spot any problems early on.
That's key EY. Catch those pests before they take over. Any other hidden benefits of raised beds we haven't covered yet?
Well, if you have really challenging soil, like heavy clay or something, raised beds are a great way to bypass that whole issue.
True. You're basically creating your own little fertile oasis, no matter what your yard is like.
Exactly. Plus, they can give you a little head start on the growing season. The soil tends to warm up faster in the spring.
Oh, that's huge. Every gardener wants those extra few weeks.
Mmm.
This is all sounding very tempting, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing a whole backyard full of thriving raised beds.
Right. You could have a whole farm-to-table operation going on.
And speaking of high-tech gardening, we can't forget the Farminaut technology the guide talks about. That's some next-level stuff.
It's true. Imagine you're out running errands and you get an alert on your phone that your tomatoes need a little extra water.
Wait, seriously, how is that even possible?
Satellites. Farminaut uses satellites and sensors to monitor things like soil moisture, plant growth, even potential pest problems.
That's like having a personal gardening assistant in space.
Yeah.
So cool.
Right. It's incredible.
Well, I feel like we've covered so much ground today. From soil recipes to satellites, it's amazing how much there is to learn about raised beds.
It's true. There's a whole science to it.
But even if you're not a science whiz, the guide makes it super approachable. And who knows, maybe we'll all be monitoring our veggie patches from space one day.
That's the future I want to live in.
Right. All right, everyone, that's it for today's deep dive. Big thanks to Farminaut for the incredible guide and to all of you for listening. Now go forth and create those garden paradises.